Okay. I'll now call this regular council meeting to order at 5:30 p.m. Okay, adoption of the agenda. So before us we have the June 8th regular council agenda. After discussing with admin, I'd like to invite a motion to amend the agenda by removing item 7B, mandatory capital projects, long-term infrastructure planning update. Can I get a motion, please?
I so move.
Okay. So Councillor McDonald has moved that motion. Call it to question. Please.
I may interrupt, Madam Chair. I understood Council was also looking to remove item 3B from the consent agenda to bring it forward to the June 15th meeting.
Okay, so one motion for both?
Yes, please.
Okay, so it's a motion for both. Councillor McDonald, you'll move both?
I make both those motions, yep.
Okay, so we're moving to defer 7B, and Councillor Hideko, I believe, requested to bring the consent agenda item to a June 15th meeting. Call it to question. All in favor? Okay, passed unanimously. Okay, now I'll need a motion to, I think, adopt the agenda as amended, right? That was it. So, okay, we're good. So now on to the consent agenda, which is the previous minutes. I'd like to invite a motion to adopt the consent agenda being the minutes from the June 1st regular council meeting. Can I please get a motion for that? Okay. Councillor Fedeko?
I'll make that motion.
Okay, we'll call it to question. All in favor? Okay, passed unanimously. Public hearings, there are no public hearings tonight, so we can move on to delegations. I'd like to invite Stacey Lowe, Executive Director of Community Safety and Wellbeing, to the podium to introduce the RCMP delegation.
Good evening, Deputy
Sorry, can I
Mayor
interrupt
Taft.
quickly?
Yes, you
I'm
can.
sorry. I forgot to pass regrets. Councillors Singh and McFadden, as well as Mayor Nagel, are away dealing with personal matters at this time. So, sorry, forgot to add that.
That's okay.
Continue on.
Thank you. So this evening, I'm happy to introduce, we have a delegation from the RCMP. I'm going to let them introduce themselves at the podium so that I don't wreck anybody's last names, but they are here to present the RCMP's annual presentation to Council about policing in our community and some of the stats that they're seeing.
No problem at all. Got the crew. So we have quite a contingent here. So thank you very much for the opportunity for us to be here today. We do want to, we hope to address any questions that you may have, and hopefully we present some information that's going to answer some of the questions that you might have as well as we continue to go forward. I will say this, that I want to start by, I know Council supported very much the building of the new detachment and the new police office here in Cochrane. And I can tell you this, I've been there personally, spent a little bit of time trying to figure out how I can move my head office there from it's into there. It's a beautiful building, but what it does, it provides just a great space for our people to work as well. And I can tell you, spending time in there, spending time even in the coffee room and talking to some of our members, and just how pleased they are to be part of that. And I can tell you, we were up in the far north here last week in Nunavut and the Northwest Territories, and people talk about the Cochrane detachment. So you've done very well, so thank you very much for that. I we'll pass this over to the team as we go forward, but I just want to start by talking a little bit about a couple of the things that I think are on everyone's minds and some of the thoughts around what's the future of policing in Alberta specifically. We hear that often. You know, there's been a lot of conversations around that. I think there's been some information and maybe some thoughts and guesses as to what's actually happening. I can tell you this, as you know, the previous Prime Minister on his last day dropped a paper called the White Paper. We call it the White Paper, where it said the RCMP should get out of contract policing. That caused a lot of concern, not only for our members, but for the communities that we serve as well. And I can tell you that since then, the current Minister of Public Safety, the federal minister, has made it very clear that, and he'll say this, that they are prepared to meet any province, any territory where they are in policing, and looking forward to start negotiating the new contract as it goes forward in 2032 and beyond. So we're happy to hear that. The position that I'll take, and I've taken publicly as well, is it's not the police's position to decide who polices. I think in a democratic society, we know some countries that actually do that, but in our democratic society, it has to be the communities that decide. So our focus is we're going to continue to be apolitical with respect to that, and be very clearly separate from the political agendas and conversations, but really focus on public safety, and that's what we want to present to you today. One of the things that I hear a lot about is around financing and cost of policing, and I can tell you that every community that we work with has that concern and has voiced that concern. One of the challenges that we have is that the cost of policing is going up. It definitely is. We're seeing it with Calgary, we're seeing it with Edmonton, and we're not immune to inflationary pressures. But what we need to do is make sure that our communities get the service that they want, and we will 100% be accountable for every dollar of your taxpayer dollar that's spent. And we're going to continue to look at ways that we can, one, be more agile and responsive to community needs, and be agile enough to be able to respond to those in a timely manner. So what we want to express and explain today as well is around what does that costing mean, in terms of Cochrane, the 90-10, the 10% paid for by the federal government. What does that provide that you are not actually paying for, but what services do you get in return? So I know there's been some great investigative work that's occurred over the last couple weeks. In fact, that highlights some of that. Maybe we can walk through. We'll have Dave Brunner come up and talk about what that looks like and when that investigation starts and how it actually progresses through. And not to sell the RCMP as an organization, but more to say, this is the answer that you can provide to your ratepayers when they're questioning around the cost of policing. So with that, I think I'll go to Nina. I'll ask Nina to come up first, introduce herself, and then she can start talking a little bit about finance.
Did I do that? I'm gonna guess my name is the name, though I know one ever wants to pronounce it. My name is Nina Sahasrabadi, and I work with the RCMP. I oversee the business strategy side of us. So I will talk a little bit about the policing agreement that you have, and here in Cochrane, I am so happy to take questions during and or after, however it works for you guys, because I know it's kind of complicated sometimes with our policing agreements. So you are, being a community over 15,000, you have a municipal police services agreement. And that agreement is between yourselves, the town of Cochrane, and the federal government. There's a cost share formula with that agreement. Cochrane pays 90% of actual costs, and the federal government pays 10% of actual costs. So one of the things that there's a lot of, I would say, misunderstanding about is people, and you may know this, but people often think we get a whole bunch of money and then we either spend it on things we weren't intending to spend it on, or where did the money go? I just want to let you know that that's not how it works, and I'll walk through that with you before, but also, or after, but also with the cost share agreements. For Cochrane, your bill for last year will settle in around 4.7 million all told, and what you're not paying is about 500,000, approximately 500,000 that the federal government is chipping in. So your total police service value is over 5 million, but you're actually being billed at about 4.7 million, and that's as a result of the cost share. If you were a community under 5,000, so a lot of the rural communities around you, if they're under the provincial police service agreement, they also have a cost share arrangement under that police service agreement. The provincial government pays 70% of the total cost. The federal government pays the balance, the 30%. So really, rural Alberta, communities that are under 5,000 get about $545 million worth of police services, but the province of Alberta gets a bill for approximately $382 these are last year's dollars, because of that 30% cost share. So the federal government is contributing 163 million to policing in Alberta, rural policing in Alberta. So I think I just wanted to sort of let people know how that works through the cost share. Okay, so how do we plan for your finances? So this is, how do we come up with a number? And I know that some of my staff met with folks from your community today to walk through something called the multi-year financial plan. The mayor and or CAO will get a copy at the end of it to sign off on. What we do is we use multi-year financial planning to predict costs as best as we can based on what we know. What the cost of policing is this coming for at this juncture, we're talking about 27, 28 costs, and the 3 to 5 years in advance, of course, the first year, fairly certain, the out years, it's sort of speculative, and we refine that as we go. So what we do is we sit down with your detachment commander, Dave, will be sitting down with your staff and talking about the planning for costs, for what you'd like police services to look like. There's some things that the RCMP need to put in place. For example, we're modernizing some of our equipment. Some of our pistols needed to be modernized. We've had that on the plan for a long time, but it's actually going to happen this year. Pistols need to be modernized. Body armor needs to be modernized, things like that. But also, how many resources would you like? How many police officers would you like in your community? And we sort of work collaboratively. We do work collaboratively with the communities to come up with that number. And then we project out what that number is going to look like for you over the next year. And then 3 to 5 years, I would say 4-year planning purpose. But we refine as we go because, what we know today isn't necessarily what is true tomorrow. I think some of the things that influence those costs, and like I said, some of the things are controllable. So we can control the discretionary spending that Dave and his team undertake, whether it's to repair something, whether it's to do something that really they have a choice about doing or not. Depending on conversations with staff, depending on sort of where they're sitting financially. Staffing, we can speed up staffing, which I think is something that you've asked for, is let's get all those positions filled. We can speed it up or slow it down a little bit if a community is struggling financially and needs us to just take our foot off the gas a little bit to help them out in a year. We can control some of that stuff. We can also prioritize expenditures. So, for example, we roll out our fleet based on what we know to be probably the best cycle for police vehicles, given the wear and tear, the type of use that they're under. We have evergreening cycles for fleet. We have evergreening cycles for things like our computers, that kind of telephones, that kind of thing. We can prioritize when your community gets them. We can slow down on that. We can make some decisions that fits with the circumstances of a community. And so that does allow for particular circumstances in communities. You could have something happen to your arena unexpectedly and need to make a repair that you weren't planning for. And, and I know Rita, who speaks with a lot of the communities, she will often say, just give us a call if you're running into troubles and we'll see what we can do to help out in that way. But the reality is in policing, there's a lot of uncontrollable costs. So operational tempo, what's happening in your community, that can lead to some uncontrollable costs. Market conditions and inflation. Tariffs coming in has really impacted the cost per item of whether it's a vehicle or what the cost of a pistol is going to be. Fuel has swung very high, and then it had a little bit of a reprieve, and now it's back very high again. So that really does impact things. Salary and our indirect rates. So salary really is that collective bargaining. Of course, the RCMP isn't at the table. That's collective bargaining is negotiated between Treasury Board and MPF, which is the National Police Federation. So whatever that lands out at, we don't have control over that. It lands out where it lands out. We do predict, we do give you some based on benchmarking and sort of what we've seen out in the police universe, some ideas, and that's communicated through your multi-year financial plan. I think we've sort of suggested, you know, you may want to put away 3.5%. That's what we're seeing, but how that shakes out, we don't know, so that's not in our control. And of course, equipment, training and acquisition timelines, just given the circumstances of the world, whether there's supply chain problems. You know, we had a lot of trouble replacing our computers when there was the chips were in short supply across the world. We couldn't get, so we had troubles with computers and radios and phones around those things. So it's just those things that are out of our control. What we do strive to do, though, is I think at about Q4, so at about June, July, every fiscal year, we operate on the fiscal year. Of course, you operate on a calendar year. But for us, every June or July, we start giving you monthly updates about how we're seeing expenditures. So maybe we know in July that this isn't going to be realized for whatever reason. We communicate that and send that over so that it is collaborative and that you as a community can plan around expenditures as best as possible. So we do our best to do that. Billing for expenditures, as I alluded to before, you know, there's a lot of people, and I've heard this in the media, you know, we gave them so much money, we don't know what they did with 16 million. Well, I can tell you that we don't get a check, just like we don't from you guys, right? We do a multi-year financial plan. We tell you what we expect your costs to be, and then we invoice you. So we set that annual funding letter in collaboration with the community, and then we invoice you. So we take a quarter of that funding or of that budget level, and we invoice you on the quarter. At the end of the year, what we do is we reconcile the costs. So if you had a lighter lighter number of people working, those wouldn't be paid for. We would add those up through the year, and then we would reconcile that. And I can tell you that last year, so in 25-26, we expected you to spend about 5.6 million on your policing at the beginning of the year. Throughout the year, we sort of monitor what your spending is. And I think it was in about December, we reached out, maybe November, reached out and said, you know, we're really seeing you trend a bit low. Would you like to reduce your invoice? So we reduced it by 300,000, I think, at that juncture. We saw it was still trending quite low. We reached out again, asked if you wanted to reduce it again, or if you wanted to realize the cost a little later in the year, or the savings a little later in the year, and that's what you decided. But in the end, your total bill was approximately 4.7 million because you're billed just for the actual things that took place in the town of Cochrane from a policing perspective. So we do reconcile that out at the end of the year. And we try to have, again, those discussions throughout the year. I know that our staff just met today to sort of talk through the planning process and through what they can expect through the year. So I think that's very helpful. Another thing that I like to always highlight for folks is what's really driving our budget. And what we see right across all of our budgets is in some budgets it's a little higher, in others it's a little lower, but approximately 80% are driven by the cost of people. So, you know, it's really salary and benefits and all those things that support the people is really what's driving the cost. And as you can see from the chart, we just took, what we did was we took the constable salary of 2024. That was the last one we'd pulled at that time. And we compared ourselves against the other two police services, big police services in Alberta. And you can see we're not the highest, we're not the lowest. We're right in the middle there of pay. So, you know, we're being paid in that marketplace. That is the market for policing. And that really is what's driving the cost of policing, I would suggest, in addition to those inflation that is driving the cost for probably every single program that you have.
You can go back to that just
Yep,
for 1 second. So just one of the points that I think is really important with respect to this is we're in the most competitive labor market in policing that I've ever seen. So we're seeing places in this country, actually in this province, and this isn't just a competitive labor market in Alberta, it's competitive across this country, actually into the US as well. So we're seeing times, I've been doing this now for almost 40 years, and I can tell you that I've never seen where people get signing bonuses to join a police service. In fact, it was always the opposite. We had way more people applying than we could ever use. That wasn't just the RCMP, that was everyone. So we now are at a time where we're all trying to get the same people. So I would argue that if you're not paying within this range, and I know it's difficult for communities, but when you're going after that competitive labor market like we all are, and we have, actually I should have introduced Corey Daly, Deputy Chief for the Calgary Police Service with us here today. He's going to be with us all week, and I can tell you it's just great having Corey here. He's part of their Calgary's leadership team, and we're kind of drawing on all his knowledge and experience as well. But one of the things, and they'll say they're in the same market, they're trying to get those same people. We're trying to hire those same people. Edmonton is doing the same thing. And if you're not paying there, you're not getting the high quality people. The challenge with policing is if you don't pay now and you get substandard people, you'll pay for that later on. You'll pay for that in public trust and confidence. You'll pay for that in lawsuits and prevailing lawsuits. But really, it's reputational harm to policing, and that can be just disastrous to deal with. So you kind of are stuck with, you have to be close in there. And one of the things that the NPF did, the National Police Federation, was it did bring the RCMP in line with everyone else. I can tell you, traditionally, we've never been there, and that hasn't been the way it is. But with this labor market as we're in now, this is critically important.
So I just wanted to touch on some of the things that you as a contract partner, you as a municipality are not being billed for because of the way the contract's written. So when you have members transferring in or out, you're not billed for those relocation costs. Of course, you know, we live in a French and English country, and we do have to translate things, and we do need to offer services in both official languages. There is no cost for the translation, that kind of thing to the community. Legal services, and I think we've got a couple examples maybe of when this is helpful, but you know, we've got members being sued for things. We have to have lawyers on staff that assist us with a number of things. Those costs are not billed to communities. And the settlements and the claims that are made against us, so if we have an accident or we damage somebody's home in doing an entry, I'm not the right person to talk about that police thing. Oh boy. But if we damage somebody's home and they put a claim in against us, that is not, those costs are settled, and by the RCMP, it is not billed to contract partners. And then things like workforce adjustment, if there were some changes in the staffing, that kind of thing, those sorts of things are never billed out to communities. And that's just part and parcel of the contract, how it's written. So there's a lot of benefits there that you're not actually being billed for, and I think that's important to understand because they can be quite costly. And then there's a number of services that you're provided, but you're not actually billed for. And, you know, I'm gonna actually ask Dave Bruner to come up because he's got some examples around this, you know, at the divisional level, overall, we've got an emergency response team. We've got our major crimes unit who would investigate homicides or very serious offenses. We've got our OCCs, or operational communications, the people who answer and dispatch 911. Real-time operations center, and I'll let these guys talk a little bit about that. But those are services that are provided to the town of Cochrane, but you are actually not billed for those services. So I don't know if you want to touch on a few of those events.
Sure. Hi, thank you for having us tonight. If you're on Facebook, you'll probably recognize a couple of these things I'm going to talk about. So the same residents in Heritage, in 2024 in January, we had a major incident up there where we executed a search warrant and we had ERT come out. So there was a full ERT team that did a hard entry into this home, and we arrested a person inside the home, and we seized quite a bit of drugs and a bunch of other items that were stolen and obtained illegally. So the same residents in December of 2025 was the scene of the same type of activity where they actually, because of the danger to the public, they gassed the house and blew out the windows. It was a pretty big operation. Same person was living in the home. And the interesting part was we got a substantial amount of methamphetamine, cocaine, and then currency that was seized, that would obtain from crime. So it's nice to have ERT, and we have members of our emergency response team that live in our community. And going back to what the CO said about the building, their vehicle is stored in our compound when they're not working, and on weekends and nights. And we get Cadillac service from the ERT team. We also get Cadillac service from the police dog service that lives in our community and has a key to our building and uses our building on a regular basis. Some of the other things that we get that you're not billed for is the provincial polygraph unit. He works out of our building. When our GI or a uniformed member has a file that we need somebody to take a polygraph, he's there and he puts us in there, and we have that. So we had a serious allegation involving a child with a man that a suspect that we had a polygraph done on, and it happened in a very expeditious manner. So those are good things for us to, one, have the building and have the ability to house those partners in policing. And it's kind of fitting that CPS is here tonight, because a lot of our investigations right now have ties to the city of Calgary, and our crew unit and our GI unit work extensively with Calgary City Police. And if you've seen the news recently, we've in the last probably 4 months, the crew and the GI people have got about just close to 5 kilos of fentanyl, meth, and cocaine off of the streets. And I know when we did the press release, we talked about a little bit about the collateral damage that those drugs can have in our community. And yes, they were being picked up in Calgary and transported through our community and through Stony Nakota and to the Bow Valley. So we know that there was some spillover into our community by these people, and it was just a great investigation for our guys. And we've said that we're going to keep the pedal down, and if you're trafficking drugs in our community and doing those things, that we're going to come after you. We may not get everyone, but we're certainly going to see and try and get the ones that we know about and work on that. So those are kind of some of the benefits of the things that we get for no cost other than some cheap rent at the detachment. Any questions?
I don't know if somebody wants to talk about art talk.
Yes, so, good evening, everyone. I'm the Criminal Operations Officer for all of Alberta. And what that means is I oversee all the criminal operations that take place, and that can be a very minor to a very major event. One of the things that, and I don't know if anybody here has toured the Art Talk in Edmonton, you're always invited. It's a very interesting space, because what we've done there is we've integrated a number of different radio functions, and not only that, but also we have connectivity to other police services, to peace officers. We're working now on the integration with the sheriffs, and we'll have someone from the sheriff's office working there as well. The idea behind it is not only the integration of resources and interoperability, but it's also a place that if somebody calls at night, we'll use Cochrane, if somebody calls from Cochrane at night and they have a serious event, well, the Art Talk actually takes over, and it's a real-time operations center. And the idea behind it is that there's always somebody that's able to give direction or guidance to we'll use Cochrane as the example, anybody that's located in Cochrane, meaning any of our CMP members or employees. The idea behind it is that we sometimes don't have to call someone either out of bed or away from another call, because the real-time operations center is managing that. And what it does, it gives them authority, my authority, to make a decision on, do we need a plane sent to Cochrane, a helicopter? Do we need the emergency response team, a police dog? There's many, many other services that we offer. So they don't have to call me, and they don't have to try to get a hold of me to make a decision on who they're going to call and when they're going to call. One of the things that we saw really beneficial, and it didn't happen in Alberta, but of course we've all heard of Tumbler Ridge. I was in a meeting that day. The event took place in Tumbler Ridge. Immediately, BC needed assistance from Alberta. They didn't have to track me down. RTOC made a decision. We're going to call the ERT team. We're going to call our plane. They're going to pick the ERT team up, and they're going to start heading towards Tumbler Ridge. We actually had 2 planes that went there, and our members, even though not first on the scene, our ERT team actually helped clear the school and make sure that there was no other threat to the students and to the community. So it really is beneficial, and until you really see it, we use a number of programs there where we have an overlay of communities where that not only can we see what the dynamics of the community are when it comes to building, highways, and all that stuff, but we also have a system called ATAC. It's Blue Force tracking, which means all of us log on to an app, and when RTOC is involved or calls, they can see where we are, and they can also say, okay, we have someone close to, we'll say, if they're out in Stoney, Dakota, we have someone in Stoney, Dakota that can help Cochrane, someone in Airdrie that can come and help. Maybe we need to call, Calgary Police Service. Do we need to get support from their helicopter? So all that is I'll say superimposed on the screen, and the people in RTOC can then say, I need you to go here or there, and they can see, where we are, and I'll see the people that are on the road and answering the call. And there's a couple of benefits to that. It's not only deployment of resources, but it really manages what we call blue on blue. We know when there's another police officer in a certain area. We know that, if we get a phone call from someone in Cochrane that says there's someone out in my backyard, I don't know who it is, I don't know if it's the police, I see lights flashing, well, RTOC can go in and say, okay, it's this address, and we have no RCMP members or police in that area. So it's likely if this person is going through the yard or trying to break into their shed or garage to hide, they know it's not a police officer. So that's just some of the things they do there. One of the other things that we're working on is it's the RPAS program. So it's basically drones. Our drones, what we can do is we can pipe back in some of the video from the drones into RTOC. And drones, as everybody knows, they can be a hindrance for a community, but for us, they're very beneficial. And we've had examples where, somebody has broken in, done an armed robbery, and have tried to flee from the scene, and we've used a drone to track them down and to be able to arrest them within, I'd say minutes, within, half an hour to 45 minutes. Whereas without the drones and with different air support that we have, that could take us hours. We'd have to call a dog handler out, and we'd have to call multiple people out on overtime. So that's another thing that that they do there. So if you're ever in Edmonton or coming to Edmonton, I welcome you to attend the RTOC. We'll give you a tour of the building, and we'll show you how it works. We had, I think we had a community mayor and council that visited one day, and I think they thought we set it up because we had a call, and the call was in an area where it was a pretty complex environment, and they were able to see how RTOC works, unfolds, and then how we respond to different calls. And they were amazed. Everybody that's visited there have been very amazed at the technology and the ability of the people that work in RTOC. And it's not only police officers, we have an analyst in there. So if we get a call we'll say Cochrane, and we're trying to figure out, okay, have we had certain crimes in Cochrane? The analyst will start going into our systems, and if somebody calls and said, I just seen a red car with a license plate such and such, well, that analyst can go back through all of our systems and say, okay, well, it's likely that could be the suspect. So there's a ton of work that goes in there in a very short period of time. The big thing for us, though, I think, is we have that, what I would call the overwatch at a higher level through RTOC, and they have the authority to make decisions without having to call me or the commanding officer, and that's really beneficial. As you know, when we're trying to get to a scene quickly, we don't need red tape and somebody waiting to try to wake me up out of bed, or if I'm out wherever, and they have to call me to try to get permission to do things. Well, that really eliminates what I would call that red tape. So they have the authority to make very high level decisions, and they do it on behalf of myself and the commanding officer. Again, you're welcome to attend anytime at all. We've talked a little bit about the OCC. That's our operational center. That's where all the 911 calls go in, and all the calls for service. The real-time operations center, they don't answer the original call. It actually gets passed over from OCC depending on the type of call. That's been, it's worked really well for us. We're going to continue to work on that. Covert operations, a lot of times we don't think about covert ops. I've been in that business over the years, and we do a lot of stuff that communities will say, well, we never ever see a police vehicle. We never see someone in uniform. Oftentimes when you're in bed or you're somewhere else, we're doing things in the background that nobody has any idea about. And obviously that's happened in Cochrane lately because of some of the seizures that we've had by a Cochrane detachment. Air services, no charge for that as well. We actually have 2 planes in the division and 1 helicopter, I think, right now. There's no cost for that. Those planes and the helicopter have specialized equipment that if we have someone lost, they can search. There's infrared capabilities, as there is in some of our drones. So we're trying to build a total package that can handle, I will say, almost anything that comes in, and we will have the, I guess, the modern capability to be able to do it and manage it. Major crimes units, they usually do our high-level investigations such as murders. They come at no cost to Cochrane, and what happens, they come as a team, and usually there's, it could be anywhere from, it depends on what kind of a dynamic situation it is, but there could be a dozen of them come, they do an investigation, and they'll try to get the perpetrator arrested and charged, as soon as they can. One thing I wanted to mention about ERT, the emergency response team, it's not only just, there's four people in the picture on the bottom. It's very much like a SWAT team that we'd see on some of the American movies and things. The idea with ERT, and we found that the more that we call ERT out, oftentimes it's less violent and ends in a less violent situation. And you would think that's the opposite, because when we call ERT, the thought is, well, okay, they're going to end up shooting someone. In actual fact, with that ERT package comes negotiators, there's scribes that come with that. We can also have, depending on the situation, we can have our PAC teams, our health clinician and member with that. So do we shoot people? Sometimes we do, unfortunately, but that's not our goal. The goal is to go and lower the level of escalation and then hopefully arrest the people without too much harm. Situation we had here not too long ago, well, we did go in, we had to put tear gas in a house, the windows were blown out. There's many techniques we use to get people out of the house and get them contained. So again, it's a full package. It's just not one or two people that show up. With them, there's also the explosive bomb unit comes with them. There could be a police service dog come with them. So it depends on the call and what level the call is. And we also have critical incident commanders, and they run the show, and they give the direction based on what they know and how dynamic the situation is. So thank you very much for the opportunity. Again, if you ever have any questions, you can reach out to either Dave or Tom, and we'll gladly set up a tour if you're in Edmonton sometime, and we'll show you ERT and RTOC, OCC. Major Crimes Unit, sounds exciting, but not always. They do a lot of paperwork and investigation, but we have some really neat tools and things that we use on a regular basis for policing. So thank you.
And then I think Dave is just going to talk about local priorities.
So our priorities are very fluid. These are the ones we're looking at right now. We can always change them as the situations dictate. So traffic enforcement, one of the things that I wanted to mention about that is we're seeing the majority of the tickets, since January 1st, we've written around 400 tickets in the town of Cochrane. And over half of those are for aggressive driving. We kind of seen that from the frustration of a lot of people with the construction, and they developed bad driving habits, and now they've continued to the point where we're cracking down a little bit and trying to get that message out there that, you know, you don't need to tailgate somebody. We're still navigating the construction scene, and you know, you're going to get through the traffic circle and continue on your way. The other one that we're looking at, and you'll see some enforcement coming on that in the near future, is distracted driving. People on their cell phones while they're driving. We've really taken note that there seems to be an increase in that, and so now that we're kind of getting back to a little more normal traffic flows in the community, we're going to be targeting that. And of course, always impaired driving is one that we look at. And we've done 7 impaired driving, which is under the criminal code, and then there's also the provincial sanctions that are roadside that we utilize. So that is that's the traffic enforcement. We're starting to do a few more joint operations with the municipal guys. And we're getting out there and trying to team up so that instead of having 1 or 2, we've got 3 or 4 that we can utilize and move things forward. The number 2 is the youth mental health and the school safety. We've really seen kind of an explosion in mental health calls in the last little while. And I would say that it's maybe 50-50 now that we're having young people in school and adults calling for help. So one of the strategies that we're employing is in July, on the 27th of July, I don't know if you've heard this, but we're having a police academy with young people between the ages of 16 and 19. We get them in there and they can kind of go through the motions of what it's like to be a police officer. We're going to do some training, do some lifestyle skills, and teach them and just show them what it is to be a police officer. Make it fun. I think they're going to do boat patrol on Ghost Lake, and we'll have bike patrols, and then search and rescue is going to come out and do some training with them, and then do an exercise. And I think there's going to be some classroom time where we go into laws and statutes and what gives us the authority to do what we do. And so this is the first one we're doing, so we're hope it is a success and there's some positive results with that. So diversity and community relationships. So I started the OIC Diversity Committee, and we had our first inaugural meeting last week, and it went very well. And what I learned from that meeting is that there's 47 different countries represented in Cochrane. So we're a diverse community. So one of the goals of the committee is to promote inclusive policing practices. That's one of the things I want to do, and I want to help our people do that. So we want to enhance the community engagement. We want to support our member education. We got to realize that a lot of places that our people are coming from, the relationship with police is non-existent, and they put up with crime rather than report it. So we have to break that cycle and build that wall of trust with them, so that we get an accurate picture of what's going on in our community from these people that are coming here to make Cochrane their home. And so the number one thing is, obviously, is they're going to advise me on how my people are doing and where the gaps are and how I can work to fix that. So we have some real remarkable people that are working that are on that. There's 9 people on the committee, and it'll be stand by it. I'm pretty excited. I'm really impressed with the quality of people that we had come on the committee, just from all the varying backgrounds. So we'll be certainly, I'll be wanting to make a big impact with that committee. And then the crime reduction and the disruption, obviously, what can I say about my crew and GIS people? They've been working really hard. They're getting numbers that a lot of the federal units would be envious of in the last little while. And, a lot of their work isn't necessarily based out of Cochrane itself, but it certainly touches Cochrane. And when I speak about the collateral damage, that's, ambulances going and getting people that have OD'd and taking them to urgent care or out of our community and into Calgary to get treatment for an overdose. And then there's, a medical emergency in Cochrane that ambulance is gone, right? So there's big picture implications when these drug dealers run amok in our community, and we certainly are working to stop that. So the municipal crime gauge, as you can see, persons crimes have decreased, property crimes gone up a bit. Other crimes have gone up. I think part of that could be just from the enforcement done by our crew and GI. Break and enters go up, but there's been 2 more reported. Motor vehicle thefts and thefts under have gone down. So this is pretty typical for spring. Over the last few years that I've been in Cochrane, we see a bit of an increase, and then, it kind of stables out. Calls for service in Cochrane, certainly in the summer months, we see a huge, not a huge increase, but a fair increase in our calls for service in Cochrane. So I'm not really concerned. I mean, we see this all the time. We're certainly going to address it and do what we can to combat it and continue with the path that we're on. Any questions? Thank you.
Is that it? Okay, just first of all, thank you very much for giving us the time to be able to speak with you today. It's really important that we hear from our communities, and we're serving our communities in the way that they want the service. So the priorities, as Dave talked about, we really want our members to work with you to establish those priorities. I know, Drew, one of the things that you talked about is higher visibility, and I can tell you this is a challenge not just for this community. I think policing in general, and I hate to put Corey on the spot, but CPS as well, I think a lot of different agencies are experiencing. We came up with a computer system to track calls for service and to gather all these statistics and information. But what we actually did is we put our members now in spending more time in the offices on computer systems than actually out on the road. So what we did is we poached a superintendent for the Calgary Police Service. We hired him over and we said, take a look at our systems. Tell us what we're doing that doesn't make any sense. How do we get our members where they want to be, quite frankly? They want to be back out on the street. They want to be more visible and doing their work there instead of in the offices and sitting doing work. So he's doing a functional review. And the reason we wanted to bring someone from outside the RCMP is to be able to, he now works with us, he's part of us, but he comes with different ideas and different thoughts and different experiences. So it's really about listening to our frontline members, challenging, what is it that's keeping you out from outside of the community? And I know, Drew, that's one of your priorities. That's one of our priorities across this province. We need to get our members out there, and we need to be able to reduce that administrative burden that's on them. The other one, of course, is being more engaged in communities. So we want our members, encourage them. Cochrane's I live fairly close, actually, to here, so I spend a lot of time here. And I can, I'm often at events, whether it's, the winter festival or whatever event there is, I see our members there. And I think that's really, really important to stay engaged. And just finally, around data and information, it's an absolute open book, not only financially, but statistically. Here's where it is, here's what's working, here's what's not, how do we try something and do something different if we can make it better? So, any of the successes, and I think Dave would be the first to say this, it doesn't happen without our community. And, I'm often asked, what can we do? Encourage people to report crime. The more we know about, the more that we can address it, and we'll continue to move forward. We don't get it right all the time, and I will say that, but you know what, we'll strive to, if it doesn't work, we'll try something different and make it work. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Thank you for your presentation and for your service, and very informative for me. So I'll open it up to the floor. Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Chair. Appreciate everybody being here. It's quite a contingent for a update here on police services, and I appreciate everybody coming out. Trevor, you mentioned the new police detachment building. I'm currently serving as one of the members on the committee and going there for meetings. It is great to see what an unbelievable asset that is for our community. Hearing that it provides a Cadillac suite of services that I don't think about is great to hear. I'm sure our former building didn't provide that, and that's something we never thought about before we went and funded the new building, so it's great to hear that it has those extra benefits to it. I had two Cochrane specific questions on my mind. One was on the property crime angle. As we see population growing in Cochrane and will continue to do so, it seems to me, and my question revolves around, is it just a seems to be, or is this the experience of the members too, that we're getting more of the big city type of crimes? I saw in the numbers there that the actual amounts haven't increased dramatically, but when, just for example, last weekend we saw one I took note of was somebody having their tires stolen off their vehicle. Seemed like a very urban crime to me. Didn't seem like something I've seen growing up in Cochrane here. Are we seeing more high-density urban crimes in our community? Or is that just me reading too much social media, as you pointed out?
No.
Is it just my perception?
I'll let Dave answer specifically, but I will say this. We're seeing that spillover, right? And I think sometimes we think we police in different areas, but I can tell you the criminals know no jurisdiction. They're going to be everywhere. And that's why we need to deploy and respond in the same way. The Real-Time Operations Center is not only an oversight for our members, it's a coordination center between the Calgary Police Service, who we work really closely with. For those of you who don't know, I spent 27 years actually at the Calgary Police Service before coming over to the RCMP. And it is, we work so closely with them, and we have to, not only identifying those prolific offenders. So one of the things that didn't occur up until probably a couple of years ago is we know that our prolific offenders, there's a small group of people that commit 90% of the crime, and it's 10% of the criminal population that commit that amount of crime. And so we need to be targeting them as a group of policing. We didn't ever highlight those lists before. We now do. And we know when we hit those, I'm all for, supporting people that need the support, But I'll also say this, some people just simply need to go to jail and they need to stay there. And so we need to be targeting those prolific offenders and going after them. We're seeing property crime drop. But the idea is they absolutely do not stay in Calgary or Edmonton or other major center. But I'll let Dave speak to that.
So that particular incident wasn't a spin-off of bigger urban crime, but we certainly have and will probably continue to see people from larger centers rotating through the town and committing crime and then leaving. We do see that. That's why our partnership with CPS is so important, because when we get a license plate or a name, or most of the time they know who these people are and can put us in the right direction on our investigation. So yeah, it's inevitable. I think I talk about it in the Calgary urban area. So certainly all the communities that surround a bigger center like Calgary will see some of that. Because when they hit hard and start enforcing, those people are gonna run out and try and find somewhere else to go. And so we want to be prepared and ready to address that when they get here, or if they get here.
For sure, thank you. My other question on my mind right now is my top advocacy piece that I'm most enthusiastic for with provincially is expansion of our Highway 22 South and the River Bridge. Just from your lens, are we seeing more accidents on that road? Is it affecting your response times at all? Just curious what it means for you to have a major highway like that really needs a twinning, and how that affects our police services.
Well, it certainly can be challenging at times, right? When traffic is heavy, we have a difficult time weaving our way through traffic to get where we need to go. So yes, does it impact us? Absolutely. Would twinning that highway be beneficial? Absolutely. Certainly, as that part of across the river, as that section of the community keeps growing, eventually, yeah, it could cause us some problems for sure.
Okay. Be sure to add that to our advocacy piece when we're talking to our provincial ministers, that Cochrane RCMP agrees we need an expansion there.
Absolutely.
So, all right. Thank you for being here today.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Councillor Federico?
Thank you. First of all, I want to commend you all. Thank you for keeping the streets safe. You've had some pretty big cases lately, so it's good to see the success of everything that you bring. I have one question, and this is often asked of us. Obviously, the funding was great, the description of who's paying for what, but also we have a very, very big service area. I believe that you go all the way from, Stoney to Bragg to Water Valley kind of area. One question that we often get asked is how many officers are dedicated to working strictly in Cochrane versus probably the larger scale outer limits. And there's no two different uniforms that somebody's wearing. So I know it's all one detachment, but for people that question how many people are dedicated to working in Cochrane, do you have any numbers of how many officers that is? Because it's something that I often get asked.
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I'll let Dave answer that as well, but I just do want to, and that's a fair question, and feel free to ask. We'll tell you how many calls they're going to, and if you want to do that on a monthly basis, and we can advise the community as that goes forward as well. I think that's really important. We don't hear it just here. Anytime we have a post model, so that's where we deploy from there into the rural area, that's always a question, and it's a legitimate one, because our funds that we're paying here going for work that's elsewhere. The one thing I would say, and we've looked at that model quite a bit, and one of the advantages, as we said, crime doesn't know borders. So there is complete control between them, and we're able to respond as needed. So it's not about, so if we reduce crime in one area outside of the city, we can actually impact crime inside the city as well. But that's a question that I think, when Drew, when you asked about more data, more information, that's one I would be asking. So how many calls did you do outside of the city, and what resources were drawn out there? But then let Dave answer, but this is the impact. So what we did when we talk about prolific offenders, for instance, if we arrest Joe in some area, what we'll look at the crime that he's actually being charged for, he or she, but also what we think they've been involved in. And you'll see a massive area. And that really helps when you talk to the public about, sure, we went out there for this person, but let us tell you the context around that. And I think that's a fair question for sure.
So with our resources at any given time, we try and ensure that there's 2 people on the road in Cochrane at any given time. Usually there's more than that, but depending on the situation and what's going on, it may not be 4 or 5, right? So one of the biggest complaints and concerns that I heard when I first came was all the cars leaving Cochrane and going to Stoney. So that's why we started the Stoney Nakoda detachment. So there's 8 dedicated resources that work on Stoney. So unless it's a priority 1 call where it's like, could be life or death, the Cochrane vehicles don't go out to Stoney. And we try and field that with our provincial members and keep the Cochrane people here, the municipal people in the community. So, sorry about that. I thought I had that shut off. So at any given time, right, there should always be two in the community, and then we also have a traffic person working, so that would be 3.
Okay, thank you for that. And I certainly wouldn't expect that you would do maybe monthly stats, but I think, yearly stats would be great just to see that breakdown, because I know it's a question that I often get asked, and it's sometimes difficult to be able to explain to the public what that split looks like. And to your point, is there any, is it federally that they decide which area that RCMP would service within a certain jurisdiction, or is it just, could you change it or shrink it or grow it, I guess?
Well, yeah, it would be nice to shrink it a little bit, but I don't think that's going to happen just because of the geographical boundaries, right? It would be great to get a few more provincial bodies to help out, because we're seeing the same growth that we're seeing in Cochrane, we're seeing on the provincial side in Rocky View County. And so there's pressures on both sides for sure. And yes, it is challenging, but we've got the Stoney Nakoda people looking after Kananaskis, and then on the north up to Bighorn on the part of the res there that touches up that area. So that's actually been a big help to us to have those resources out on the nation working, and not just looking after the nation, but also Kananaskis.
Yeah, that's huge. And one last question. I know that when we spoke to you before, it was said that we should have full complementary officers that we were anticipating, or will that happen? Are we there yet to the numbers that we are anticipating?
We should be. We should be at 26. So that's what was asked, and so I tried, and I was told that happened. So that's what it should be built out at.
Good news.
Sorry, you just had a question about how many people should work in Cochrane. So if there's 26 people that are assigned to Cochrane, and you pay for 26, well, those 26 should be focused in Cochrane. So when we talk about a post model, it means we have a combination of municipally paid contract police officers, but we also have provincially paid contract police officers that share the same roof. But we don't, our goal and Dave's goal is that if you're paying for 26, now you may not have full 26, you might have 24, even though you have the allotment for 26. Those 26 should be focused on calls in Cochrane. You asked one question, I just thought about this, is you said, well, how do we increase that, or can it be increased? As a community, you can actually ask to increase, if you have the funding, and the statistics are there to show that you need more police officers per capita or per call. There's a process where actually you can write a letter to the public safety minister. They basically say, okay, yes, you know what, you can, yeah, we'll approve that or we won't, because you remember 10% comes from the federal government. So there are communities that are municipalities the size of yours and bigger that do ask for additional people. It's just you have to be able to commit to Public Safety Canada that you can fund that, and they're willing to enter into that agreement. So I don't know if that, I just thought about it when you asked that. I'm not sure if we were clear on it, but there is process to do that. especially as your population grows. Well, of course, we can't have the same amount of police officers doing, you know, the same work for a population that's either increasing by, I forget what the number was, I looked it up earlier, but you've increased considerably over the last 5 years, right, in Cochrane. So hopefully, I don't know if that clarified anything, but that's the way we operate is, you know, we're not saying that if you're a Cochrane RCMP member, you won't be called to help out and vice versa. So it kind of goes two ways. And I know some communities will get very concerned that if they're paying for 24 or 26, those 26 should be doing policing in Cochrane and not going outside of the boundary of the city, right? But obviously, sometimes we have to do that. But it's Dave's, we'll say, job or responsibility to make sure that he creates the watch and the shift in a way that Cochrane is getting the coverage that they're paying for. Thank you very much.
Perfect, thank you.
That's it for me. Councillor McDonald?
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation, and thank you all for what you do every day for our communities. I wanted to ask you about the diversity committee, but you included it in your presentation. Congratulations on forming that. I have a friend who sits on that and told me about the first meeting, and she was thrilled with how it went. I think it's wonderful to see your work and your staff continuing to challenge themselves to meet the diversity that's represented in Cochrane now. I have a specific question about the last slide, and it's just because I didn't catch it fast enough. There was a bar at the bottom left, and I think it was CSI comparison of Alberta and Cochrane. Can you just speak to that?
Yeah, and I saw that as well, and I thought that was going to be important to talk about. So crime severity index, so it's a measured not only number of crime, but severity of crime. So a homicide will score higher than a minor theft,
Sure.
as it should be. So it's more of a concern to community. And if you look, that's one of the things, you know, is Cochrane a safe community? You know, Alberta average is 95.6, but Cochrane's 38.1. And what I will say, you know, there's lots of talk about, you know, say rural crime, for instance, is out of control in the province. And I can say this, the CSI in rural Alberta has dropped 6.9%. We've seen communities like Strathmore have dropped their CSI by 18%. Wetaskiwin's the same with Red Deer. So it was actually Strathmore's 25% reduction. So we're seeing a reduction in overall crime, you know, and sometimes we'll say, you know, a lot of the issue is around, you know, why is that happening? And when we can target the right people, and we don't do this alone, the community's giving us information, they're talking to us, we're working with our partner agencies, with Calgary, with Edmonton, we're targeting those people and putting them in jail. Working with the Crown as well. There's lots of talk about revolving door. We've actually worked very closely with the Crown to say, this has to stop. We have to, some of these people really do need to be held accountable for what they've done, and keeping them in jail has actually lowered that. So we have teams that are targeting those prolific offenders throughout the province. I mean, that's a part of the provincial side, not yours, but they are working here as well. So seeing quite a bit of reduction. And that's a good point. That's a good question, because it does put in perspective where we are, where Cochrane is with respect to safety.
Yeah, and I really want our residents to know
Yeah.
just how fortunate we are here. Speaking of trends, thank you for all of that. You talked about aggressive driving tonight, and you talked about mental health calls. I think I heard you say 50% seem to be on the young people range. The policing academy that's coming up, that sounds fascinating, starts at 16 years old. But is that then accurately representing those mental health calls that you're getting, or are those skewing younger as well?
Well, I'll let Dave talk specifically about here, but we are seeing a significant increase in mental health calls for youth. And I can tell you, you know, when I was in Calgary, we looked at that as well. International studies are saying that the youth are very challenged. There's all of the issues that we're seeing, you know, that maybe not you, you're a lot younger than me, but you know, I've experienced as a young person, and now with the internet, it's all the challenges. Children are facing a much more complex society than we did. You know, I was up in the north, and we had dinner at someone's house with a 13-year-old girl, and she was explaining what school was like, and it's complicated for her. You know, she's talking about all of these things that we all talk about in the political realm, and it's a challenge. So we are seeing a proliferation of mental health issues with youth. You know, one of the things that we say, you know, this can't just be a policing issue, obviously. We need to work very closely with schools. The research will tell you that if you don't get to children before the age of grade 6, that it's too late often, because some of the, you know, there's conditions that have already occurred. You know, adverse childhood experiences, you know, social workers will talk about that all the time. ACEs scores will proliferate into or create mental health issues later on down the road, untreated, undiagnosed, and we're seeing a lot of the challenges that we're seeing.
And so would you say this is an increase in those ACEs that are
It
being
is.
measured
We're
younger
seeing
and
that,
younger?
and not just here, right? We're
Yeah.
seeing it everywhere. You know, one of the challenges, we police 95% of the geography in Alberta, and with the territories as well. There's not a lot of resources. I would argue there's not enough resources here. There's not enough in Calgary and Edmonton, let alone in some of these remote, more isolated remote communities. We're looking at teaming up with the Calgary Police Service, actually Corey's area. YouthLink has now changed the name to Discovery Center. And so we're looking at, we can never have a YouthLink like the Calgary Police Service has in all of our communities, but we're trying to do it virtually, and it's something that they're working on as well. So it looks at every child in grade 6 in Calgary gets to go through this. We want to bring it to our kids as well. And it talks about things, online bullying, it talks about harassment, it talks about gang life, and really prepares children for sextortion, which is something, you know, something like that. Something that, you know what, it's beyond a police officer to actually address. But if you have the right people teaching those children at the right time, we can have great impact.
Right.
Just one thing I forgot to mention, and I apologize, but in the fall, when school gets back in, we have a gentleman in our office, and his job is peer-to-peer. So when some of our officers go to a traumatic event, they can sit down with him, and he gives them has a conversation or gives them material to read about building resiliency and staying resilient. So I've had discussions with him, and I'm hoping to get him into the schools with our school resource people in the fall to speak to our young people about building resiliency and how they can do that. So I know it's just a little thing, but it could be a big thing if it's successful. And he's very good at what he does, and he's very excited about the opportunity. So we're working with Rocky View Schools and seeing if we can make that happen.
I'm so glad. I'm so grateful to all of you, and I'm so grateful that your scope of work extends past bad guys and guns and extends to these diversity committees and your work with our kids and proactive policing. I think we can certainly be optimistic, and thank you all for what you do.
Thanks for that.
Okay, those are some really great questions. I think I only have one. You kind of hinted at the transition or the end of, or kind of just long-term policing, what that looks like. Can you comment at all on Alberta sheriffs, and is that still the intention? I know it's still a few years out, but is there anything new on it? Is there anything that, as a municipality, we can expect? Is there going to be dramatic changes? Do you know?
Yeah, sure. You know, and we're looking for what, you know, we've heard, and we've heard very clearly from the Premier, from the Minister as well. It's about augmenting and supporting policing services in this province. And I will say this, you know, no one has an isolated view you know, on policing or public safety. And I think the more that we can work together, you heard Wayne talk about the Real-Time Operations Center. If we can bring those kinds of resources into that operations center and coordinate our responses together, I think it becomes really important. It's about identifying, you know, what are those gaps in services. One of the things that we're challenged with is fugitive apprehension. So there's a lot of individuals in Alberta that have warrants for arrest. It's difficult to get to all of them, but they actually have a team that actually works on that. One of the other areas that I know you've used here is SCAN, so Safer Communities and Neighborhood. It's an act that was started in, I believe it was 2009. It started in Calgary. What it was to go after derelict houses. So to get a search warrant for a drug offense, for instance, if it's a drug house, it takes the thresholds quite high to be able to do that under the criminal code. But what SCAN does is it goes on the civil area of prosecution, so that threshold's much lower, where it doesn't necessarily charge the individual, but it actually goes after the owner of the house. And so we can disrupt a lot of the drug type activity. So those are areas for prisoner transports. We know that if we can have the sheriffs transporting prisoners, we can keep our members in communities. And that's what we want to do, have them back more visible and doing the job that they're supposed to be doing. So what we're doing is working with the sheriffs as they design their process to say, what are those gaps and how do we actually implement and move forward? There were some conversations around replacing or providing an alternative to the RCMP. We don't hear that as much anymore. It really is about how do you actually supplement what's already there, and we're 100% behind that. And I think having them in that real-time operations center allows us to put the right resource to the right call at the right time.
I'm happy to hear that. Yeah, that helps. My next kind of brief question, how are you promoting the Youth Police Academy event on July 27th, was it?
Yeah, super happy about that. And I'll let Dave talk about how he's going to promote that. But it's something, you know, I don't know if you've ever seen some of those. We have them in different communities throughout the province. And we have a barracks actually in Edmonton where we bring some of the kids from our northern communities and actually stay there and work with our different officers. And they see different things. But you know, they have a graduation at the end of it, and I can tell you there's not many dry eyes in the house, not just parents, even police officers as well. So it's only a great thing for the community. It's great for our members as well to see some of this and to work with the youth, because they know that if they do the right thing, they can make a difference. So I'll let Dave talk about promoting it.
Yeah, so the poster that we had made went to the schools, and they sent it out. Every student in the high schools in Cochrane should have got that sent home and have that information. I think at last count we're at 7 applicants all right now, with a few more that are sitting in the mailbox. So we'll more than likely get our 10, and that will be the inaugural. And I've said this before to council that we live in a community that treats the police so well. We sent out a few requests for sponsors, and it was overwhelming. We actually had to turn people away that wanted to help us out with this. So it's come together rather quickly, and it should be a lot of fun.
Excellent. That's excellent news. I'm looking forward to seeing how that plays out. Thank you again. I don't think there are any more questions, but thank you so much for coming tonight, and thank you again for your service.
And thank you for your time. I just want to say as well in front of everyone is thanks to Dave. You know, he is so committed to this community and has been for quite some time. And, you know, I always think I'm kind of watching over him because I live so close, but you know what, he just does a great job. And thanks to the team. I think you've got a great team here, a great community. And it wasn't hard to say, hey, who wants to come down to Cochrane? And everybody comes down. Fence and post, everyone wants to go for dinner there, but no, Nina, you can't. But thank you very much. Thanks for all your support. Thanks for the great community, and we just look forward to dialogue. If there's questions, you know, we will present any information. If it doesn't make sense, then we won't be doing it. We'll change. You did have one question about, does the federal government decide on boundaries? I should probably answer that. Sorry, it was that, you know, so there was a lot of thought that the federal government phones me and says, Trevor, these are your priorities, and that doesn't happen. Your priorities are set here. Your chief of police will decide what the priorities are with you in the community and provincially. I have mandated to work with the province to set the provincial priorities, but no, if we want to change boundaries and move things around, we can just, it's not that, we do a lot of work to make sure it makes sense to actually move it. But we've seen things where, like, you know, there's a river kind of, you know, some of it makes it really difficult for members to respond, or, you know, or the population grows in one area that it didn't before, and we can just simply change those. And that's the way we work forward. With respect to increasing resources with the province, we do have 2 business cases going forward to the province. One is for the Indigenous communities. So as Dave said, I actually sail at Ghost Lake, so I'd see those police cars going by, and I'm thinking onto the reserve. And so that was the idea. We needed to move resources out there. A lot of our Indigenous communities are under-policed, and we need to have more resources there. So that'll be with us in the province making that determination. The province has to agree to it. So we've got a business case for that. And there was another one, won't affect you, but some of the questions around 24-hour policing. We don't have 24-hour policing everywhere. In order to do that, it'll be an increase of about 400 officers, maybe a little bit more. So that business case is going forward as well. But it's not about wasting money. More resources don't always give a better result. We need to make sure, as I said, every dollar that you spend, or that you give us, that we spend on policing, we're accountable for. So thank you very much for your time. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. Okay.
Respectfully, Madam Chair, we need a motion to accept the report as information.
Okay. Can I please get a motion? Councillor McDonald?
I make the motion to accept the RCMP report as information.
Okay, call it to question. All in favor? Passed unanimously. Thank you. Okay. Next up, I'd like to invite Jaylene Robertson, Director of Ledge and Administrative Services, to the podium to present privacy, access, and security policy.
Good afternoon, Deputy Mayor, members of council. The presentation this evening introduces the proposed privacy, access, and security policy for council consideration. The policy establishes a formal governance framework for privacy, access to information, information security, and related compliance requirements under Alberta legislation. While many of these operational practices are already occurring within our organization, this policy formalizes them into a consolidated and document corporate framework. The purpose of the policy is to establish consistent principles and processes for how the town manages information. The policy supports compliance with Alberta's Access to Information Act and Protection of Privacy Act. It applies broadly across the organization, including employees, contractors, service providers, systems, and municipal records in all formats. Policy also establishes accountability and governance expectations for the privacy and information management activities. So why is this policy being introduced now? Well, the change to legislation from FOIP to Access to Information and Protection of Privacy Act has mandated certain requirements that previously did not exist within policy form for the municipality. The privacy management program is now mandated for all municipalities to have in place, which is what is driving this policy at this time. Administration currently undertakes many of the practices, I would say most of the practices that are included within the policy that is in your package this evening, which includes records handling, privacy protection, cybersecurity controls, and access request management. The primary purpose of this policy is to formalize and standardize those existing practices. Provincial legislation increasingly expects public bodies to maintain documented governance frameworks and clearly defined administrative controls. This policy also helps ensure consistency, accountability, and organizational clarity moving forward. Policy is built around several foundational principles. These include accountability, transparency, safeguarding of information, limited collection and disclosure of personal information, and supporting public access rights where appropriate. Policy establishes complaint resolution and compliance mechanisms to support oversight and continuous improvement. The policy establishes responsibilities across the organization. My role, the Director of Legislative and Administrative Services, will serve as the designated head under the legislation. That is in mirror of how this was being handled under the FOIP Act. All releases of information that were done through the municipality were done under my authority. The Privacy Access Officer, along with the Privacy and Access Coordinator, are responsible for administration, oversight, compliance coordination, and operational guidance. Managers and departments are responsible for implementation within their operational areas, and all employees and service providers have responsibilities related to protecting information and complying with policy requirements. The Privacy and Access Management section of this policy establishes rules governing the collection, use, disclosure, and retention of personal information. It also formalizes process for access to information and correction requests. Policy outlines timelines, fee administration, severing requirements, and third-party review processes consistent with legislative requirements. The intent is to ensure consistent and defensible administration of access requests. Policy also requires privacy impact assessments, or PIAs, for significant new or modified systems, technologies, or practices involving personal information. PIAs are used to identify privacy risk before implementation and establish mitigation strategies to deal with those risks. This is increasingly becoming a standard requirement under provincial privacy legislation and modern information governance practices. Where required, PIAs will also be submitted to the Office of the Information and Privacy Commissioner for their review. The policy itself also includes governance requirements related to the use of artificial intelligence services. This again is a mandated section within the new required privacy management program by the Alberta government. This reflects evolving legislative expectations and emerging organizational risks associated with AI technologies. The policy requires human oversight, or human in the loop, and verification of AI-generated information before operational use. It also distinguishes between low-risk and high-risk AI activities. High-risk uses would require additional oversight, approval, and privacy impact assessments prior to implementation. Specific to information security, this policy establishes administrative, physical, and technical safeguards for municipal information. This includes role-based access controls, confidentiality agreements, security expectations for vendors and contractors, and breach reporting requirements. The policy supports a layered approach to protecting confidential information and reducing organizational risk. Again, this work in the information security space has been undertaken by our information services team ahead of policy adoption, and this is just the formalization of those processes that have already been in existence. The policy again establishes formal processes for complaints related to privacy access or information management issues. It defines investigation principles, response timelines, and remediation requirements. Privacy breaches would trigger formal response and mitigation procedures, and the objective is to ensure complaints and incidents are managed consistently, transparently, and in compliance with legislation. This policy again consolidates multiple governance areas into a single framework. It supports consistency across departments and provides clear operational guidance for staff. It also improves documentation, accountability, organizational readiness for evolving legislation, and technology requirements. Ultimately, the framework supports public trust, transparency, and responsible stewardship of information. Initial implementation can be supported through our existing administrative resources. Full implementation, however, of the privacy management program will create ongoing operational requirements. Additional administrative capacity will be required to sustain legislative compliance over the long term. Resource demands will include privacy governance, training, access requests, PIAs, breach management, audits, and program maintenance. Future staffing and technology requirements will be evaluated as the program matures, and Council should view this policy as establishing the governance framework with future resource requirements to be assessed through annual business planning and budget processes. Administration is recommending that Council approve the privacy, access, and security policy as presented. Approval would establish that formal corporate framework aligned with legislative requirements and current organizational practices, and administration would then proceed with implementation activities, training, supporting procedures, and ongoing compliance and oversight. Thank you, and I'm happy to answer any questions Council may have.
Thank you. Is anyone prepared to make a motion? Councillor Federico?
I will make the motion that we accept the privacy, access, and security policy as presented. And I only have one question. Did we always have a privacy access coordinator, or is that somebody new that's taken on that role?
Through the Deputy Mayor to Councillor Federico, we actually have Angela Hall. She's here this evening. She is our team lead for our records management team. She was the FOIP coordinator as part of her role this time, and now she takes on the privacy and access coordinator role. What is different and what I will advise is a mandated position is the privacy access officer. Currently, we're assigning some of those duties to Mr. Singh to do on the side of his desk. We will be presenting additional information to our executive leadership team for review to determine additional staffing for the extensiveness of this new policy and requirements under the Act.
Yeah, thank you. And I realize this is not just Cochrane going through this. It's everywhere across the province. thank you for the breakdown, because I actually, when I was reading the report, I'm like, holy man, it's extraordinarily detailed, all the information that's in it. So it's hard to figure out what exactly has shifted and changed from FOIP regulations to what is being proposed now. I don't know how you can give kind of a quick overview of the different changes that there are, but there seems many, so.
I can give you a quick overview through the chair again. Is that FOIP was really about how do we access the information and our duty to assist residents to gather that information. The Protection of Privacy Act is really about what do you do with that information from the minute it enters your system, and how do you protect it and release it and restrict access to it within the municipality. So previously a municipality would have, everyone would have the layers of access to, say, our GIS system. Whether your role required it or not, if you moved around within the municipality, you carried your access with you. We are currently going through a program right now where we are looking at every system we have within the organization to determine whether your role requires that access or not, and limiting access from staff who are not required to have that access as part of what they do every day. There's also going to be a greater security classification system that existed informally specifically to confidential information or restricted information. This new security classification system is going to actually be applied to every single piece of documentation and email exchange. Every bit of movement of data through our system is going to have this classification system applied to it. So that is specific access to network drives, specific access to SharePoint sites that's going to have that classification imprinted on it. So the implementation is going to be enormous of this policy. And I'd say the greatest piece is the PIA piece. So the privacy impact assessments. The province literally just provided us with the templates late April for that, and some of the guidance on this policy itself in April. And so a lot of municipalities are in this same boat with us, trying to sort out how we take what we have and create this greater policy. I would say Cochrane is an advantageous place in that most of what they were mandating are things that we're already undertaking. Even simple things like when an access request comes in, Angela and her team consistently reach out to everyone who is putting an access request in to provide clarity, to narrow down scope, to have them understand the weight of the request that they're asking, and allow us to either impose fees or narrow it down to a point where there are no fees, because ultimately we'd rather be very clear on what you're asking for and get you exactly what you need than cast a wide net and charge you a large number of fees to obtain information you probably don't need for the reason you need it. So we had our AI team that are looking at new AI technologies for the municipality review this information. We are thankfully in line with what they're requesting for this policy. We are in line with all our IT and cybersecurity requirements already. So we do have some things that we put in place over the last few years that really advantage us in ways that I would suggest other municipalities don't have.
Thanks. I mean, and I'm sure that it's going to morph as time goes on anyway. So I guess we'll look for future renditions of what this might look like. But
absolutely.
Thank you for breaking that down. It's a lot more clear.
Okay, seeing no further questions, so I'll call it the question. All in favor? Passed unanimously.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Notices of motion. I don't think there are any. Mayor's report. He's not here. So that brings us to councillors' reports. Are there any? Councillor McDonald.
I've got a quick one. Last week, I met with a board member of the Cochrane Public Library to discuss the library's increasing needs and challenges. On that same topic, I also participated in a webinar offered on Bill 28 with the significant implications to libraries across Alberta. I enjoyed serving lunch at Big Hill Lodge with some of my colleagues in honor of Seniors Week. And I just want to say what a beautiful and tangible sense of community that exists inside of that lodge. Shout out to my table mates at that luncheon. Mayor Nagel and I attended the graduation of Innovate Cochrane's fresh round of graduates at the Cochrane Innovation Ecosystem. I want to pass along once more me and the mayor's congratulations to local businesses Village of Play, Revive Global Search, and Innovate Cochrane themselves, who participated in their own program to continue growing and shape-shifting. And finally, I'm looking forward to Thursday night's Natural Environment Protection Task Force speaker series here at the Ranch House, where we will welcome Brian Keating from the Calgary Zoo, and we will learn about coexisting with wildlife in Cochrane.
Okay, can I get a motion to accept this information, please?
I so move.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. Okay, we'll call it to question. All in favor? Okay, passed unanimously. Thank you. No closed session items, so that brings us to adjournment. We'll adjourn the meeting at